Howdy, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. Today is Tuesday, July 28th. The time is 6 p.m. We're here for the final budget workshop. We can have a little whoop on that one, please. Of the Coppell City Council. There is a quorum present. Brianna said she would be here shortly. But
She's here. Shortly.
See, I have
The mayor has delivered.
I had that ESP right behind me. We do have a complete quorum present, so I'll call the meeting to order. And thanks for all the attendees for being here tonight. This is rather very pleasant. Item number 2 is our citizens' appearance. Persons wishing to speak must sign the register and list their residence address. Each speaker must state his or her name and their address. Presentations by individuals shall be limited to 2 minutes each. A speaker's time may be extended for up to 2 additional minutes with the approval of the majority of the council. Persons signed up to speak will be called in the order they signed up. No personal attacks of any speaker shall be made against any member of the council, mayor, individual, group, or corporation. Please note that there will be no comments or deliberation from the City Council due to the requirements of the Texas Open Meetings Act. We do have one person that has signed up to speak tonight, and that's George Piermoff. George?
Yes?
There you are.
Yes.
Please state your name and address for record, and
Okay.
have at it.
All right. My name is George Piermoff. I live in Coppell at 1721 East Beltline Road, apartment 626. Very close to the Carrollton line on Beltline east of MacArthur. Okay. And I have 2 items which I'll try to go through quickly. Yesterday, Kevin and John came over to the Senior Center and gave us a brief outline of the budget and answered our questions. And my question was, at the top of your webpage regarding the budget, it says that this budget will raise less revenue from property taxes than last year's budget by an amount of $492,294. And that obviously, in the strict sense of the sentence, isn't true, because property taxes obviously have gone up because of the increased value of all the property in town. And Kevin tried to explain to me that this statement is required by law, even though it's, and in some way it's correct, but to me and the general public, it's not. And I really don't understand why this is said, and then in the initial proposed budget, property tax income, no footnote or anything, just says $49,442,186. So I would just like an explanation as to why this statement is here and why there are no footnotes or something to explain why it leads off. First item on the City of Coppell initial proposed annual operating budget for the fiscal year 2022-23 says this, which for all intents and purposes isn't really so.
So, thank you for your comments. As I stated, we're not allowed to answer your questions during the council.
Oh, okay.
I can state that the statements that you read are required by state law. That is a factual statement. If you would contact Kim,
Yep.
right there,
Right.
she can fill you in on all the gory details.
Okay. And we have a meeting set up for around August 11th, I think.
Okay, she should be able to more than adequately take care of your questions.
Okay. Thank you. I look forward to that.
They might get answered tonight.
Pardon?
They might get answered tonight.
Oh, okay. And the second point is, or topic, is the budget for the Cultural and Recreational Department. I would highly encourage you to include in that.
Just 1 second.
Sure.
Mayor, he has exceeded the 2 minutes, so he wanted to ask for an extension.
Are we okay with an extension of 2 minutes?
Yes.
I'm seeing it. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I would just request that in the budget for the Cultural and Recreation Department, which hasn't been broken down yet in public form, but will be soon, include an initial analysis of the feasibility of having an indoor pickleball court, because there's great popularity in town, as you all know, for pickleball, and even it made the cover of Parade magazine this past weekend. And friends of mine up in the Northeast, 85-year-old avid tennis and paddleball players have switched to pickleball. And there's great interest here, and it was too bad that our facility isn't quite large enough to handle it properly, and the Corps closed it down. So there's no indoor place to play pickleball. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other citizens that would like to make a comment? All right, thank you. Moving on, item 3 is presentation and discussion regarding the final budget. Ms. Tien is going to handle items A through E, I believe. Kim?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. This evening, I will cover the valuation results, both the no new revenue tax rate and the voter-approved tax rate. I'll also cover changes that we made to the debt service requirements, or presentation, I should say. I'll update you on general fund revenues, expenditures, and fund balance walk forward. And then at the end, I will provide an update on the water sewer fund, since we have received rates from both Dallas Water Utilities and Trinity River Authority. So we'll begin on page 2 in your packet. This page shows the final certified valuation compared to the preliminary valuation, and it's the box at the top in your packet on page 2. It's also the information that's shown on the slide. Is everybody with me? No?
Try again.
Okay, so this is it's the box that's on page 2 of your packet,
Which is that?
and it's also this information on the slide.
Okay.
So this page shows the final certified valuation compared to the preliminary valuation. Preliminary values provided by both appraisal districts totaled $10.1 billion in May, and final certified values came in at about $9.6 billion, as shown on the slide and in your packet. So values did come down almost 5% between May, when we were provided the preliminary values, and then July 25th, when we received certified values. The bottom portion of your page 2 shows the preliminary value, certified values, value loss, and then the percentage change for each year since 1991. Over the past 31 years, the average percent of value lost between the time we received preliminary values and the certified values is almost 5.5%. And I point this out simply to share that it's truly an estimate when we begin talking about values in March and April. It's an estimate really until we receive the appraisal district certified values on July 25th. We do track annual value information, and we watch the market, and we try to provide the best estimates during the budget process. And again, if you recall, we estimated a 9.39% growth in the budget as far as values. And that was what was presented to you at the June workshops. And again, this page shows that values increased 10.14. So our estimate was short by about 0.75%. And I think that's pretty good.
So help me out with the difference between what's on the screen here, the minus 4.9%.
So what's
change
that?
in valuation versus a increase of 10.14.
So the change in valuation is simply showing that in May of 2025, the appraisal districts told us that they thought our value was going to be $10.1 billion. And as they worked through protests and update the value information, now, as of July 25th, they've gotten through a lot of the protests that were submitted. So now our certified value is 9.6. So that is the certified value that your tax rate will be based on.
Okay. I was trying to confuse the comparison from this year to last year.
And we'll get to that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry.
Nope, you're good.
No, I do not.
So page 3 shows not only the total increase in the property value of the city, but it does provide a breakdown by property category. So this slide shows the same information in both the table and the graph. And this is where the mayor was getting the 10.14% increase. On your page 3, the far right-handed section shows the 2022 tax year certified taxable value, again, as a little over $9.6 billion, which is an increase in value of about $885 million over the 2021 certified values. And now I'll share a little bit about the breakout between property categories. The commercial property represents about 12.8% of the growth, and residential represents 9.43% of the growth, with business personal property growing 8.3%. So I did want to take a moment, this is not in your packet, but it does show what portion of property value is from commercial and residential. In the early 1990s, the split was 20% commercial and 80% residential. And you can see in this chart, you can see a shift in the makeup of property values has continued to shift. So in 2017, the split was 41% commercial and 59% residential. In 2018, the split was 41.5% commercial and 58.5% residential. And then in 2019 and 2020, the split was 43% commercial and 57% residential. And now in both 2021 and 2022, commercial property makes up 45% with residential 55%. So you can see that the allocation in property value between commercial and residential has narrowed as the city has developed over time. And it appears to be leveling off at the 45-55 split. Next, we're still on page 3 of your packet. And this shows the breakout between new construction and reappraisals. So the last column provides the growth breakdown for the 2022 tax year. The first section shows new construction, and new construction makes up about $30.4 million, or 3.4% of the increase in value. The totals that I'm telling you right now are not in your packet, but they are on the slide. We just show the individual amounts, but not each category's total. Commercial makes up about $19 million, or 66% of growth from new construction, and residential accounts for about $10 million, or 34% of the growth from new construction. So if you look on your chart, I've provided fiscal years 2020 and 2021. You can see that the value from new construction is declining. And I point this out because the impact of SB2 on Coppell as we're not growing, we're more in the maintenance stage, is very different than the impact it would have on a growing community. And that's because of the way that it treats new construction when it's calculating the new revenue tax rate. Okay. The next section on...
So you might point out that the new construction is excluded from
Correct.
that calculation.
The new construction is excluded from the new revenue tax rate. It's based on the property that was here in the prior year. Okay. Thank you, Mayor. The next section on page 3 and on the slide shows the reappraisals. Reappraisals are initiated by the appraisal districts, and reappraisals make up about $725 million, or about 82% of the increase in value, which would be expected based on what we're seeing in the market. Commercial makes up about $281 million, or almost 39% of the increase in growth from reappraisals, and residentials make up about $444 million, or about 61% of the growth from reappraisals. And then the growth in value from business personal property is about $129 million, and it represents almost 15% of the increase in value. So again, the budget presented to you in June projected an increase in value of 9.39, and the actual growth is about 0.75% higher at the 10.14% increase. And the impact is that we received about $65 million more in value than we had originally thought we were going to receive. So are there any questions concerning the valuations before I move on? Okay. Well, before we move on to page 4, I want to take a moment to go over the no new revenue tax rate and the voter approved tax rate. And this information is not in your packet, which is why I provided a handout to you of the PowerPoint presentation. So I wanted to remind you before we get started on the Seesaw Effect. So remember, as values go up, the tax rate comes down. If values happen to go down, if values went down, the tax rate would go up. So we're pretty familiar with this slide. And I think the bubbles here, you saw a couple of times or seen a couple of times. So this slide shows the no new revenue tax rate calculation. And the first thing to notice is that the prior year total revenue, the first bubble, is less than the amount calculated this time last year. Last year's tax revenue shown in the budget document was about $50.6 million, and here we are showing a little over $49 million. And the reason is because the appraisal district estimates the taxable value of property in dispute. And so throughout the year, as they settle with property owners, they update the city's value. And so since the actual value of property can change during the year, so will the revenue that's generated. So, and then next we use, so then the blue bubble, so that's the revenue piece. The blue bubble is the current value of property taxed in the prior year. And that's to the mayor's point when he said new construction is not included. This is where that takes into effect in this calculation. And so the result of this is that the tax rate being proposed, so since the actual value of property can change during the year, so will the revenue, and we use the current value of property taxed in the prior year, as I stated. So the result is that the tax rate we would have proposed last year if this was the property value is what you're seeing. So the 0.519193 would have been our tax rate last year instead of 58 cents, based on if these were the values last year. Clear?
So that's your no new
revenue rate.
No new revenue.
Correct. Okay, so then this next slide shows the voter approval tax rate. And so the starting point for this is the no new revenue maintenance and operations rate plus property that was added during the year. So this is where we get to add any new construction. This rate is then multiplied by 1.035, which is the cap for increasing the tax rate without going to the voters. And so the debt rate is then added to the total voter approval rate the debt rate is then added to obtain the total voter approval rate. And so this year, the voter approval rate is 0.518735. A rate equal to or more than this rate would require voter approval. Okay? Are there any questions on this? Okay. So this final slide provides a comparison of the no new revenue tax rate, the voter approval tax rate, and the proposed tax rate. Historically, the no new revenue tax rate has been less than the voter approval tax rate. This year, the no new revenue tax rate is more than the voter approval tax rate. And so how in the world is that possible? Especially since the NNO rate can be 3.5% higher under the voter approved rate than under the no new revenue rate, right? So it just doesn't make sense. Well, there is a reason, and the reason is because of the debt portion of the tax rate. When you're looking at the no new revenue rate, the tax rate is based on the tax that was outstanding last year. The voter approved rate, the tax rate is based on the debt that's outstanding this year. And because you, council, directed us to defease debt with the proceeds from the North Lake property, that has caused your debt rate to go down and has caused this to be different than we're normally used to seeing. Okay?
Correct me, but this is a very unusual situation that we really have never, well, the legislature only instituted this a few years ago, but you would never normally expect this to occur. Is that correct?
Yes, we even called our tax attorney and talked to their tax rate calculation guru. She brought up our tax rate calculation that we do in their system, and she immediately knew the cause. And she's like, "Oh, your debt went down. That's why." I'm like, "Okay," because we were shocked to see this.
Do you know offhand how this current debt rate compares historically?
I do not know offhand how this. I mean, last year it was 10 cents, and this year it's 7 cents. So about a little over 7.5. Does that help you?
Well, I was looking at some data today.
Uh-huh.
We've actually had a debt rate over 20%. So this is significantly lower than it's been in the last 20 or 30 years. Oh, Mike's got this stuff right in front
Oh
of me.
yeah, we had, I do have it right here, 19 cents,
Yeah.
over 19 cents.
22, 25.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we've been on a very nice downward trend on that.
We have.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mike.
So now I'm going to move to page 4 of your packet. This page and this slide show you that the tax rate used to prepare the budget. So some facts about this tax rate is we have data going back to 1990, and this tax rate is the lowest rate since at least 1990. The decrease in the tax rate from the current tax rate to this tax rate is also the largest decrease since 1990. So again, how was this accomplished? First, council's direction to use the proceeds from the sale of North Lake to defease those bonds directly impacted the tax rate. The INS, or the debt portion of the tax rate, was a little over, as we just talked about, 10 cents for the current year. And again, because of council's direction, the INS portion of the tax rate decreased to, as shown on this slide, a little over 7.5 cents for this next budget year. I want to again remind you of the seesaw effect, because as values go up, the tax rate comes down. So the combination of reducing the INS portion of the tax rate by paying off those bonds, not issuing new debt, and then the current real estate market has resulted in the lowest property tax rate since at least 1990, which again is as far back as we have data. And I'm going to pause because I want to give you a moment, because that's a pretty huge accomplishment, right?
Yeah.
So it really is.
Actually, it goes back, I did some research years ago on the historical tax rate. And if you go in and read the old agendas back in the archives, I was able to go back to 1985. And the tax rate in 85 through 88 was 0.56. So this is the lowest rate, at least going back to 1985.
Thank you. So now, not to take away from what your decisions have accomplished, but I do think it's important to point out that if in the future values should come down, then the tax rate would need to increase to generate the same amount of revenue. I only share this because I think it's important to know both sides of the equation. And this did happen in 2011 and 2012. Both of those years, in 2011, values were less than in 2010, and then again in 2012, values were less than in 2011. And then in 2013, values did start to come up. So I only point this out so that as you're making decisions that could impact the future, that you're keeping this in mind, and that we're not surprised should values ever come in less than they are in the previous year.
Excuse me, Kim. Don?
So I promise not to go down this rabbit hole too much, but I do want to, I guess I'm trying to think through specifically the no new revenue rate applies only to M&O, correct? I mean, that's...
We calculate a total no new revenue and a total voter approved. And the reason that it's important this year is because of what you did to the debt, right? So it does only, I mean, the voter approval rate is focused on the maintenance and operations. And so the maintenance and operations can only increase less than 3.5% without going to the voters. So correct.
Okay. I was trying to reconcile because, you know, we talk about no new revenue tax rate applies only to the M&O rate, but then the no new revenue tax rate is the 51.9 cents, which isn't M&O. That's
It's a combination.
It's a combination.
of the two. So that's what I'm.
And
So you don't go back and.
But Don, you have to add, I mean, you're.
Yeah, I would add them together,
The
but.
no new revenue rate is the M&O plus the debt, so what your premise is correct. It's just the plus sign gives you the total rate.
Right.
So the calculation's on the M&O side.
Calculation's just on the first one, but. So the. Well,
but you also,
I promise I wouldn't go down the road.
No, but the no new revenue rate is based on debt that was outstanding last year.
Right.
And because we defeased the debt, that's why it looks weird. If you wouldn't have done that, I think it would
I'm sure.
be easier. You would only be seeing the impact of M&O.
I'm sure I just need to work through the calculation because I would have thought you would ignore the INS piece completely and focus only on the M&O, and there would be a no new revenue M&O number, and that's all you would focus on. Because that's the piece that can grow 3.5%, right? It's just that piece.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, I trust everything's correct. I just was trying to reconcile.
The tax rate, so I'm trying to simplify it
Right.
for everyone. The
Sure.
tax rate calculation that we do does look at just the M&O piece.
Okay.
When they're calculating what the M&O piece can rise to. But for all of this,
I got it.
we have to publicize the no new revenue rate and the voter
Which
approved
includes the
rate
INS.
total.
Okay.
So that's what we're focusing there.
That works. All right, thanks.
Does that help?
Sure.
Okay.
And it's the state mandate that you publish that no new revenue rate and state as such, right?
Yeah, and we even have to put it in the front of our book, and so it has the no new revenue rate, which is the total, and then it shows the no new revenue M&O tax rate. So we have to show the total, and then we show the M&O portion. So I just thought it would be easier to focus on the
Yep.
total rate
I see that.
because of the weirdness with the debt portion.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're going to go back to page 4. Right here. Okay. So we're going to go back to page 4, and we're going to look at the middle section of the page, which shows you the total amount of property tax revenue that will be generated by the proposed tax rate of 0.518731, which is less than the no new revenue rate, and it is also less than the voter approved rate. And this tax rate will generate about just under $50 million. This section also shows the amount of revenue that each portion of the tax rate will generate. The M&O portion of the tax rate is 0.441836, and it will generate about $42.5 million. This amount is used, again, to fund police, fire, parks, the Corps, the tennis and pickleball facilities, the senior center, the library, public works, community development, and then departments that support those departments, like enterprise solutions, the employee experience department, finance, and the city manager's office. Again, as previously mentioned, the INS portion of the tax rate is the 0.076895, and it will generate almost $7.4 million to cover the principal and interest payments due during fiscal year 23 on outstanding bonds. This page also shows that the allocation of the tax rate is about 85% to maintenance and operations and about 15% to the debt service or INS. The prior year split was about 81 to M&O and 19% to debt service. And again, the decrease in the debt service portion is because of the defeasance. In addition, here it's showing that the total revenue that will be generated under the current budget, or the proposed budget, I should say, is about 49.9. Last year, the tax rate, the revenue generated was 50.6, almost 50.7. So there is a decrease in the amount of revenue being generated from the property tax for this proposed budget than what was proposed for last year. Okay? So are there any questions on this page? Okay. If there are no questions, then I'm going to move on to debt service, which is going to be page 5. There's no questions on tax rate or valuations.
Mayor,
Kevin?
just a statement, and to be clear, we have done things like increase senior exemption, and we're still generating less revenue total, but still increasing exemptions to give a little bit more tax break for certain people.
Correct. This valuation does include the shift in the over 65 and disabled exemption from 75,000 to 100,000. That is included in this.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Bijou?
Kim, I have a question for you. The certified value as of July 25th, is it both Dallas County and Denton County?
Yes, sir.
So I know in Denton County, the protest is still going on.
Correct. And so that's back to when I shared the revenue that we're using to calculate. Let me go back here. So when I mentioned the revenue here, the 49 million that's being used, last year they had protests still going on. They do certified estimates, and then throughout the year they are adjusting our value. So our value is actually coming in less than what we anticipated, because they told us they thought we were gonna get this value, but then as the protests went on that weren't completed by the 25th, those values came in lower than what they told us, they estimated to us.
Okay, that's for the Denton County. And the Dallas County?
So Dallas County is the same way. They have
Same way.
about 3% of our value is still under protest. Denton's is about 25%. But they're much smaller. They're a much smaller portion. So, yeah, correct. So Dallas has most of theirs. They're just 3%.
Don?
Just to clear, so we're down, I think I picked up the right numbers from the existing budget. So 50.6 is our property tax revenue from last year.
Correct.
And it's 49.9 this year, so it's down. The M&O piece is going up about $1.3 million, is that correct? So because of the shift, because the INS is smaller,
Right.
I'm looking at that right. So general fund or is getting about $1.3 million more than
Correct.
last year.
Correct. And the debt fund is getting less.
Going lower,
Right.
and overall.
And overall, it's less.
Overall lower, okay.
And
thanks.
your overall tax rate is significantly less
Right, got it,
than the
thanks.
current year.
So is the debt service coming from interest rate
So,
reduction?
go ahead and
or is it
continue
coming
on.
from the rating income?
So then, so we are going to move on to page 5, which is the debt service. The remainder of the presentation, I'm going to point out changes between what you saw in June and what you're seeing tonight. Again, on page 5, this is a summary of the debt service fund. And the difference between what you are seeing tonight and what was presented in June is that we adjusted property tax revenues to the amount that was shown on page 4, right? Because we have a different tax rate and different values, so the property tax revenue that we're generating changed. The other change is related to the change in the presentation of certificate of obligation bonds that are outstanding. Historically, we have issued a certificate of obligation bonds for street projects, water and sewer projects, and then we even issued them for CRDC, the Art Center project. And we have typically and historically showed that debt and the related principal and interest payments in those corresponding funds. In turn, we would record a portion of that issue for water sewer projects in the water sewer fund, and then the portion of the CRDC debt in that fund also. And then only the portion related to street projects would be shown in this fund. But doing this is not consistent with how we report it to the SEC. The SEC requires us to report all the total issue of COs or GOs must be recorded and reported to them as COs and GOs. And the reason for that is because these are tax-supported bonds. When we issue COs, we are pledging the full faith and credit of the city. We are internally having water, sewer, and CRDC pay their portion. If anything ever happened to sales tax or anything ever happened to the water and sewer fund, the city would be required to set the tax rate for debt to cover all COs and GOs, regardless of why they were issued, what projects they were used to fund. Okay? So this is, to me, it's a more transparent presentation for bondholders. And it's also a more transparent presentation for the community to know what their tax-supported debt is. It allows them to go to one place and see the total COs and GOs outstanding, rather than looking at what's here, and what's here. So that is why we were recommending this change. You can also see the ad valorem tax is still only on the 7.3, which is the portion that's related to those other projects that are not water sewer funded, they are not CRDC funded. You can see where we transfer in almost 3.2 million. That transfer is from water sewer and from CRDC to pay their portion of principal and interest on the debt. And then the service portion, the $10 million, 10.6, is the total principal and interest on certificate of obligations and general obligations. When we do the tax rate calculation, we have to show there's a line that says funding from other sources, and that's where we put this almost 3.2 million. So that when we're setting the tax rate, again, it's only based on the almost 7.4 that we need for the principal and interest on the bonds, portion of the bonds issued for street projects and those other projects that this fund typically pays for. So that is a change that we recommended. I spoke with our bond counsel and I spoke with our financial advisor, and this is how the majority of their clients show the certificate of obligations and general obligations. Are there any questions on this?
Yes, I think Don has one.
Hey, does this give us any flexibility in the future? So we have all the GOs and COs that are now on that debt schedule that are accounted for here. Could we use a larger part of the property tax rate for all of those obligations in the future? Is that
You could have done that today. So it
instead of
doesn't change.
$7.4 million from property tax, we could have had the whole $10 million come from property tax, right?
You could.
And then
And you could do that today, simply because they're certificate of obligations.
Okay.
So this is a strategic,
Right.
having water, sewer, and CRDC pay their portion and using the certificate of obligations allows us to use our AAA rating and allows us to save on interest.
Okay.
And that's why we do that rather than revenue bonds. There's a lot of other requirements, and we don't get more than likely we wouldn't be AAA on those sources. They're less stable, right, than a property tax rate.
Okay.
And so, that's kind of why they probably wouldn't be AAA rated.
So it really hasn't changed in what we're able to do. It just
Nope.
It's more transparent though. It all shows up in the same.
Correct. It is
spot
more
now.
transparent because at any time you
Right.
could shift it over here and pay less. So this is to
So
me
you
more
could use,
transparent.
yeah, you could use water revenues or sales tax or property tax. We could decide how
Yes.
that's going to settle out.
Correct.
Thanks.
Issue?
Okay, on page 6, are you in page 6 yet?
We can go to page 6.
Okay.
It's just the debt requirements.
Yeah, so the outstanding balance of principal amount is 109.
Correct,
Right. So I'm looking at the last year's budget was 84 million.
correct.
So we issued additional,
No.
right?
So the reason it's 109, so on page 6, the line that shows up as what we've added to what you see there, what we've added is the $8,585,000, which is water sewer's portion of the 2018 bonds that we were showing in water sewer, now we're showing it here. Okay? And then there's almost 12.9 million that of the 2018 bonds that we're showing another line that was in CRDC that now we're showing here. And then there's about 10.8 million from the 2020 bonds that are water sewer related, and then about almost 6.4, the 6,370,000 that is 2021 bonds, that's water sewer also. And so all of those have been outstanding. We did not issue any new debt. It's just now we're giving you a picture of this is the total debt outstanding that are COs and GOs and could have the potential to need to be tax supported.
Okay, so we paid off close to 10 million for the Cypress water bond last year.
Mhm.
That's also taken out of,
Yes, sir.
okay, but it is showing under the 84 million, right? On last
So I think, Tamara, do you know it's about 74 million, I believe, is what's outstanding after, yes. 74 million is what is outstanding would be outstanding as of 9/30 of 2022. Comparing to what you're looking at, not this.
Okay,
Okay,
this one.
you're looking at that.
Right.
So if you remove the amount that we did fees and you remove the principal and interest payments we've made on that debt on that page, it will get you down to about 74 million.
Okay.
And then if you take that 74 million and add these amounts, that gets you to the 109.
Okay, so this is the highest, so let me ask this.
Okay?
When was the last time, or what was the highest amount of debt the city of Coppell ever had?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
I mean, this 109 now,
It's always been 109. It's how we've been presenting it. So as you can see, this is more transparent.
but not 109 because we paid off 10 million last year.
No, because if you flip back in that book, you'll find debt for water, you'll find that same schedule for water sewer, and you'll find that same schedule for CRDC. If you go further back if you go to the water sewer section, you'll find a debt retirement schedule for water sewer.
I think
Yeah.
last year, if you had done this number, it would have been closer to 120.
Exactly.
Okay,
That's what I'm saying.
Because we had the
10 million we paid
North Lake.
off.
Right, so
Okay.
this 109 would have been 10 or 11 million dollars higher last year.
Exactly.
correct.
Okay,
Got it.
that's my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions
So,
on that?
and so to your question, I understand her, can you imagine trying to go back through
I know.
15 years and the different funds? That would be going back through I've done a lot of history where it's.
We had a lot of projects, yeah.
Yeah. Don?
So the only, if I looked at the initial proposed budget, we only have revenue bonds, we just have one set of revenue bonds, is that right?
Correct, and that has to say in CRDC.
So that's funded by the sales tax?
Yes.
Sales tax funded. Okay,
Yes.
everything else is GO or CO, right? So now
Correct.
we see everything here except for that one
Correct.
issue. Okay. thanks.
Yeah, that was the 2014 issue.
Okay, perfect, thanks.
Anything else? Okay. So next, we can go to pages 7 and 8, which is the general fund. So we updated the ad valorem current line for under the fiscal year 23 budget proposed column to reflect the amount shown again on page 4 of your packet. So the ad valorem amount that's shown here is based on the certified values and the proposed tax rate. Okay, so we updated that, and this amount is about 184 less than the amount shown to you in June. Next, if you turn to pages 10 and 11, these pages show the expenditures of the general fund And it shows that the expenditures decreased about $343,000. And this is primarily due to revisions related to salary and benefits. I'd also like to share that if we remove, as this slide shows, if we remove the cost of fully funding the Capital Replacement Fund and then the Enterprise Solutions Replacement Fund, the overall general fund budget increased only 2.66% over the fiscal year 22 adopted budget. I think this is pretty significant when you consider that the inflation rate is above 8% right now. So this is a great job that you've all accomplished. Okay. Let me see, the next page, just page 12, just shows you the expenditure graphs that were provided to you in June that are updated. And then page 13 shows you the fund balance walk forward. And again, the change in the fund balance walk forward is, again, related to this $12 million is coming out of your fund balance. So if you recall, we had the amount set aside for the Rule 3.334, and that is what we're using to fully fund the capital replacement and the Enterprise Solutions Replacement Fund.
Just a
Kevin?
clarification piece, because I know some people have heard that we have that current escrow for this year. That fund is separate from the escrow fund, correct?
Correct. So this is related to years 19 and 20 and 2021, and so this is what we can keep. That is related to the current fiscal year. It's in a totally separate fund that we don't use.
Thank you.
So, I'll hold my question until later. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, any other questions on the general fund? Because then it's water sewer. Nope, okay. So for water sewer, we did not make any changes to the revenues presentation that you were shown in June. So what you're seeing here is consistent with what was provided in June. Oops. So page 15 shows the expense summary. And the primary updates are related to both the cost of water and the cost of sewer. The updates are based on actual rates that we received from both Dallas Water Utilities and Trinity River. The June projection for the cost of water, we projected a little bit high. So this line item decreased slightly from June. It was lowered by about $121,000. And that is because the demand rate increased from 312,607 per million gallons of demand per day to $320,826 per million gallons of demand per day, which is about a 2.6% increase. And then the volume rate only increased from about 44 cents to 45 cents, and that's less than 0.5%. And we had projected, I think, 4 or 5%, so this brought this down. However, TRA increased. They increased, their rate was this year $2.95 to $3.14 per 3.6 million gallons per day, which is a 6.5% increase. So in February, they were showing an overall increase of 2%, and the rates that we received in July are 6.5%. And we did receive a letter telling us that their flow is down and the cost of chlorine is up. And so basically, they're spreading costs over a lower billable flow. And I point this out because it was interesting to me, because we're getting ready to move to winter averaging, which means our flow is going to be reduced, and we're going to be spreading costs over a smaller flow to them. So just keep that in mind when we come back to you and start talking about winter averaging.
Which we will be addressing at a future work session, by the way.
Mm-hmm, we will. So, and then the last page.
Kim, before we get
Yes,
off
sir.
this, the other Tuesday night, Kent was talking about anticipated demand going up over our 18.5. Have you guys had any discussion about budgeting for an increase due to the
So-
The volume?
Right, so if we went, so based on what the rates will be, if we had to increase our demand, our budget would need to increase $320,826 if we increased it from 18.5 million to 19.5 million. If we raised it 1 million gallons, it will cost us almost $321,000 that we would need to add to our budget.
Have any idea how much per water bill that would be?
No, I have not.
Okay.
Looked at that.
It's okay. Sorry.
Sorry. No, that's okay. Something I'll look at. So, any other questions on this portion? Okay.
That's 320,000 each year for 5 years, minimum, right?
Yeah, I was wrong on that.
No?
I would stand corrected on my statement. I thought it was 5 years. That's only on our internal water restrictions. If we go over 18.5 million gallons, it's a one-day thing.
I'm not sure what you're saying.
Okay, I'm sorry. Mark, maybe I misunderstood your statement. Could you restate your question?
Well, that, when we buy that extra million gallons.
Yes.
That allotment is raised.
That's correct.
That costs us 320,000 each year.
Yes.
For a minimum of 5 years, until if it drops after 5 years, then it could.
That's correct. I made a statement the other day, though, that was incorrect related to that. I said that we had to go over 18.5 million gallons 5 days in a row. That was incorrect.
Right.
We go over 18.5 million gallons one day, then we get bumped up. So I thought I'm sorry, my misunderstanding, but I did make a misstatement on that.
I took your word for word.
What's that?
I use your word to tell someone else.
But
Kevin?
your statement was that's like the 90% threshold, the 95% threshold for our internal stages of conservation, correct?
Water restrictions, internal water restrictions, that's correct.
And can I'd just like to point out, I mean, we have given the community a tool to use to monitor their usage. It can be found on our website, so they can sign up and monitor their usage to help conserve, to help control this increase from 18.5 to 19.5. In addition, council approved the tiered rate structure where our higher volume users are paying more. So we are doing things to encourage water conservation so that we don't have to take that hit. So, okay. The last page, I would just say page 17 provides the retained earnings walk forward. And again, the only change made to it is that we updated the fiscal year 23 proposed expenditures for the changes I mentioned. In addition, expenditures here are 20 million. Normally it would be about 19 million, 19.2. This again has about $800,000 in expenditures related to fully funding the capital replacement fund. And so that's reducing your undesignated retained earnings. So I want to make sure that I pointed that out. Otherwise, your expenditures would be pretty comparable to the current year. And so that really concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have thought of.
Council, any questions? I've got kind of a future hypothetical. Based on our current rate of 0.51 XXX, our current inflation rate is literally almost an order of magnitude higher than what we've seen in the past. We're up close to 10% right now. How does that forebode for future, assuming that the rate of inflation covers through the cost of living and all of that? What's our look forward on that?
Look forward as how it's going to impact expenditures.
Yeah.
Things will be more expensive. As with this year, right? Well, as with this year, we indicated, I think it was in the first work session, each department's working directly with purchasing, and we're not applying an across the board increase. We're going through and seeing the common things that we use and testing those in the market. So who knows what the inflation rate will be, but from a process standpoint, we're very specific to what we apply an inflation rate to.
I guess my point is our state Senate Bill 2 rate, 3.5%, does not allow us to keep up with our current rate of inflation.
It's a true statement, and if we were a growing city, it wouldn't impact us as much.
But we're not, so
Okay.
it directly impacts us. So that's next year's problem, unfortunately. Anybody?
So
Kim, did you have anything else for the evening?
the only thing I would say is the tax rate that's shown, the proposed tax rate that we showed you this evening is the tax rate that I will be bringing forward on August 23rd. The budget that you have seen this evening is the budget that will be proposed on August 23rd. So if there's any feedback, anything that I need to know before then, please let us know.
And that rate is 0.518735?
Whoops.
That's right.
0.518735. Or, no, 0.31.
3.1.
3.5 is the
3.5.
voter approval. We
Right.
cannot do that. We need to be below.
518,731.
Right.
Oh.
Lower than the
Yeah,
no
those-
revenue rate, lower than the voter
Those
approved rate.
4 100,000th points are really
Important.
Yeah.
And so,
Go ahead.
no, I was just going to reiterate, it is the lowest tax rate you've had. It is below the no new revenue rate. It is below the voter approval rate.
Don?
I think the budget, y'all done a great job on the budget, and especially with inflation where it is, I mean, just so much going on, to keep it at, essentially, at least for the general fund, 2.5%, a little more than 2.5% increase, I think is wonderful. Let me ask you about this. So the proposed tax rate, in the future, INS goes up, let's say we have to issue bonds for a large street project that we might have sometime in the future. So it's going to bring on more debt service. So the implication of this is it could go up a penny or two in the future to cover, I mean, that's the potential. The INS part could go back from 7.6 to 9.5 or something, correct?
It's dependent on what y'all decide to do.
So a tax decrease of this magnitude this year could mean a future tax increase if we had to issue debt for something, right?
Correctly.
I'm correct, I've stated that correctly,
Yes.
right?
Correctly
Yes.
stated. It's
Okay.
in your purview.
Got it. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation tonight and all the hard work that you and all of your staff and all of the city directors and all the staff have done. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And we appreciate your support and your guidance and all the feedback that you've provided us.
Okay, item number 6 is a city council discussion. I think we've been doing that all along, but anybody have any final comments? So I just want to, I'm going to echo what Kim said. You know, this is a phenomenal budget compared to what we've been through in the past couple of years. You know, we are operating as if state rule or state rule 3.334 is in effect, and it would have been inconceivable to me a year ago to believe that we are where we are right now. You know, our debt service is at the lowest it's been in 30 years. Our tax rate is the lowest it's been in 45 years. And yet we're providing a level of service to our citizens that's just unparalleled. So thank you to this council for your vision. You know, this started literally a year ago and really kicks off in January when we do our annual budget retreat. So this is not a short-term thing. And you know, the fruits of, or the benefits of doing long-range planning are really starting to show off. And I know that it makes Kim's job much easier going forward. So thank you, all 7 of you, for all the work that you've done, and thanks to all the city staff that's put all the effort into here. Truly phenomenal outcome, and you know, I don't think we could have really asked for a better outcome. So thank you very much, everybody. Anybody, let's see, item number 6, we do have another citizens appearance. Do we have anybody that signed up to speak?
No, sir.
All right, thank you very much. There being no further business before this council, the time is 7 p.m. and we are adjourned.